All righty. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started here. I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, Todd Porch.
Hey, Kim, thanks a million. Thanks for all your logistical assistance. None of us would be here if it weren't for you today. So thanks for getting us all in order. Y'all, I am pleased and excited to moderate today's webinar talking about the convergence between linear and connected television. And I've got three very seasoned industry I don't know, stalwarts, I guess would be an appropriate word to use in describing these three guys. Michael Kuntz, the VP of Programmatic Sales at Spectrum Reach. Bill Condon, the VP of Global Distribution, Advertising, Content. And I don't know, Bill, we could probably go on for hours with that.
We don't have enough time.
Zumo. And Walt Horseman, the SVP and GM of Advanced Media and Advertising at TiVo. Gentlemen, welcome. Thanks for carving time out of your day today. I'll probably say thanks a number of times just because I know how busy schedules are and how busy each of you individually are in driving the businesses that you do for the brands that you do every day. So why don't we take a few minutes, though, and get everybody a little further acquainted with you and, how you have arrived where you are today and a bit of your journey. That would be valuable. As a little fun quip, also could be interesting to hear what you're watching these days. Probably whether it's on linear or in the streaming environment, it'd probably be good to set a foundation there and learn a little bit more about your content viewing. So, Walt, why don't we start with you this morning or this afternoon?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. I'm Walt Horseman. I lead the data and the advertising team at TiVo. And really our focus is on deploying new ad products across all of our footprints. And a big focus at TiVo has been deploying new TiVo user experiences across the ecosystem, both in the US and in Europe. So from smart TVs to IPTVs to streaming devices and so forth. So my team is responsible for creating new ad products and then working with our content partners to have CTV inventory available for us to sell. And then we also are developing a whole suite of new native ad products, which is an interesting, I think, development within the space. In addition to advertising, we also collect a whole host of TV viewership data across the US from a number of MVPDs whom we partner with, smart TV data as well from our own platform. And we use all that data, which I think is really important in this conversation between linear and CTV. And we use that data for targeting and measurement and finding audiences as they move back and forth. So as a little bit of background of how I got here, I actually am just celebrated my 7th year anniversary at TiVo, and gone through a number of consolidations of different organizations. And it's interesting, a few years ago, we merged with Xperi, and the real strategic foundation for that merger was bringing together Xperi's relationships in the smart TV ecosystem along with the TiVo user experience. So we've brought that strategy together and are deploying now the TiVo user experience on smart TVs, which is super exciting. In terms of content I'm watching, well, since Bill is here, I watch a lot of Zumo. In fact, this morning I was watching NBC News with the horrific story about the bridge, but I was watching it on Zumo, and I do watch some non-ad supported content, and I have been we've been watching Apple TV. I will say they've got an interesting new lot of new programming, and Palm Royale is a hoot with Kristen Wiig, so I recommend it.
Absolutely. Hey, Walt, thanks a million.
Sure.
Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Todd. Also really great to be here. So I'm Michael Kuntz, and I oversee national programmatic sales at Spectrum Reach. I'm about 2 months into joining the team here. Very excited to be a part of Charter, and Spectrum just recently became the largest MVPD in the US, which we're really proud of, now serving just over 14 million video customers. My team very specifically partners closely with various brands and agencies, really to be able to connect them, be it through linear or streaming, to the audiences that they're looking to reach across our live and on-demand platforms. This topic that we're going to discuss today is very relevant to what we're all living through right now, in particular, the team at Spectrum Reach. We've really worked hard to create a product that seamlessly sort of simplifies the viewing experience, and not surprisingly, as a result, our advertisers are able to also seamlessly blend into that experience, and of course are looking for various ways that they're able to do that from a programmatic perspective, which again is the business that I'm predominantly responsible for. Part of my role, as you would imagine, is a lot of internal education. Spectrum Reach has obviously been a player in the linear space for a long time now. Believe it or not, programmatic is a somewhat new business for us. In the last few years, we've really stood it up. And so a big part of what I and my team is focused on is working with various ad tech partners, DSPs, SSPs, data platforms, to continue to hone the product. And again, just make it really easy for brands to be able to integrate directly within our platforms, so that they're able to reach their intended audiences and also drive the right outcomes. In terms of what I'm watching now, I definitely was late to the game here, but I just finished up last week streaming The Bear on Hulu, which was absolutely excellent. I would not recommend, if there are a handful of people that have not seen it yet, don't watch it at night before you go to bed, because it does get a little stressful at times. So I also just started watching Palm Royale about 2 nights ago. Much lighter, much enjoyable, or more enjoyable and less stressful than The Bear. But yeah, an excellent show that I would highly recommend. I also still watch a ton of live sports. So depending on the league or the team, sometimes that's through traditional linear cable setup, but also do a lot of streaming through apps like ESPN Plus. So I think, like many, I still fall into that category of a hybrid viewer.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael. Glad to have you here. Thanks for joining. Mr. Condon.
First, Mr. Porch, want to thank you for stacking the deck with such. I've got on TiVo with Walt, a partner that we're distributing channels from, and then with Michael, one of our corporate parents. So very strategic of you to pull it together. So thank you.
Absolutely.
So Bill Condon, I head up enterprise sales at Xumo, which is basically our distribution, curation, monetization, and delivery of fast channels across platforms such as the TiVo, or as Michael mentioned, across Charter on the Xumo Streambox. If you don't know what Xumo is, I'm coming up on my 5-year anniversary in about 3 weeks, and it's been quite an amazing ride since I left ESPN to go to the 60-person startup in Irvine, California called Xumo, free ad-supported streaming TV. And since then, in 2020, we were acquired by Comcast. And then most recently, about 1.5 years ago, we got rolled into a joint venture with Charter. So I think this conversation is going to be really interesting about the kind of convergence of linear and streaming. I like to say just streaming television, because that's where things are going. But yeah, it's been a pretty wild ride. What am I watching these days? So I'll definitely do a plug. I'll turn on Xumo to watch all of our news channels to catch up what's going on. I love murder. Who doesn't love murder these days? So little unsolved mysteries from back in the days is one of our channels. And then just talking real quick, if you don't know what Xumo is and what Xumo is becoming, just a quick update. So 3 different distinct businesses of Xumo as part of this joint venture between Comcast and Charter. One is the Xumo Play app, which is our free ad-supported streaming TV service, 300+ channels, distributed across North America and soon to be outside of North America. So across the, the Apple TVs, the Rokus, the Amazons, all major MVPDs out there. And then you also have our device and operating system group, where you can walk into a Best Buy and buy a Zumo TV from Pioneer, Hisense, also Element. So as Walt also mentioned, sort of that operating system side of the business. And then if you're a customer of Comcast or Charter, or also now MediaCom, you can get a Zumo Stream Box in some houses that'll act as your set-top box, also act as your streaming device. So if you would have told me 5 years ago, I'd be, people would be streaming stuff on a Zumo Stream Box, and I could walk into a Best Buy or to a Walmart and buy a Zumo TV, I probably would have been shocked, but it's been an exciting ride, and excited about the convergence, and I'm looking forward to diving further in with this esteemed panel.
Yeah, thank you. I get an opportunity every couple of times a year to teach the executive MBA program, and here in Denver, at the University of Denver. And one of the things that I say to my students is, technology has never moved as fast. Transformation has never moved as fast as it is today in the media space, and it will never move this slow ever again. So in that regard, there are a lot of miles on the shoes that are represented here, and in a very good way. I think that provides a basis to really understand the mountainous transformation that we're all going through. For those of you that I don't know, my name's Todd Porch. I'm the president at Strategus. We're a pure play CTV provider. I have spent a lifetime in media, starting out moving bits and selling for Sprint, then a long 14-year career at Yahoo, and then spent about a decade at Comcast, and just recently, about 3 years ago, joined to lead the Strategus team in the pure play CTV space. And so I have drunk from a number of the fire hoses that are represented on the screen today, and certainly have a ton of respect for all of the businesses that you guys represent. Let's look at the marketplace. Like we said, it continues to evolve. Whether you're a linear player evolving or a digital player evolving, evolution is the name of the game, and to be able to strategize in this space is imperative. Product lines in each of these disciplines is also moving, which is a good thing. There's convergence. I would say there's the marketplace and the landscape is a bit fractured, and from a leadership standpoint, we all own providing simplicity to try to smooth over where those fractures are, and to try to drive a level of simplicity into this medium that we all represent. The marketplace is responding. They're still consuming content on either side. Net, there's room for everybody, whether you're a pure play linear player or CTV player or a hybrid somehow. Dollars continue to and will continue to be spent to get to the eyeballs of the consumer. Each of your companies plays across these landscapes, and we wanted to leverage this time over the next 30 or 45 minutes to get your take on how the agencies and the advertisers can help navigate. So why don't we start by going a bit around the horn here, and tell me how your specific organization is helping approaching strategically the linear versus CTV conversation. Bill, let's start with you. But like I said, I'd love to get everybody's take on this.
Yeah, I think Zumo, as I mentioned, first and foremost, we started off as sort of this free ad-supported streaming TV service, and both on our own app as well as supplying channels to different smart televisions. So I think in the beginning, we've always sort of been at the convergence of just, I like to say, the new TV, because even with FAST, it's TV on a television for free with ads. We're kind of going back to the future here. And you look now and sort of the expansion of that idea of convergence with this idea of pushing Zumo TVs out, but more importantly, the Zumo Streambox, where I'm sure Michael will kind of dive into it a little bit as well. You know, you can use that device to kind of pull together your linear, your free ad supported streaming, and your subscription video on demand, and sort of solve that. And within that area, you look at the idea of sort of a mixture potentially of, you know, it's TV. We're converging both fast and streaming. At the end of the day, it's just streaming television. And I think broadly across, you know, Zumo also sits under Comcast advertising. And Todd, as you know, spending a few years here, I think Comcast has always sort of been at the forefront of looking at and going to market with a blend of holistic video. I think you look at, you know, how the evolution of a medium. You know, Todd, you and I worked together at Yahoo way back in the day, and you had things in the beginning. You look at the buying community, and you had online advertising. When it first came out, it was this very specialized medium, and it was handled by specialized buyers and agencies. And then it evolved. And then you had mobile, followed the same exact suit, and then it evolved to become media. Then you had social, same exact thing. And now I think you're finding that with CTV and FAST and OTT, it's coming together, and the agencies are starting to converge and having holistic video buying. So the opportunity to kind of sit within there and better serve that audience, our customers, one, from a standpoint of being able to find all that video in one specific place and being able to serve into that from an ad standpoint. You're both serving your customers, sort of tying into that connectivity and discoverability. And then on top of that, you're allowing your advertisers to come in. Because I think the key thing with FAST, the big part of the F is free. You need that free ad supported aspect of it.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Michael, you mentioned, you know, on the programmatic side, that's a bit of a new road that Spectrum is charging down. Give us a bit of your perspective on, you know, how at the 30,000 foot view, how Spectrum is approaching linear versus CTV.
Yeah, I mean, I'm coming into this situation in a way that's somewhat unique from the standpoint of most of the convergence happened pre my time joining the organization. And so today at Spectrum Reach, we really don't look at it as linear versus CTV. More so, it's about offering that same customer experience across both linear and CTV. I mean, there's a tagline that we use at Spectrum Reach: we're built for what's now and what's next. For us, what's now really is the total convergence of TV and streaming. It's already occurred. And so from us, we think about it through the lens of both our subscribers and our advertising partners. As a video subscriber of ours, you have the option of viewing live programming and on-demand content across, you know, your favorite cable networks. And you can do that either through the traditional set-top box setup or through our Spectrum TV app. In either case, the experience is exactly the same. It's the same features, it's the same channel guide. We actually like to play a little game. When we walk into meetings with some of our agency partners, we show a screenshot and we ask them to guess what's the linear experience and what is the streaming experience. And inevitably, 80% of the people don't know the answer because it looks exactly the same. And then to Bill's comment, we are so excited about our relationship with Zumo. The recent introduction of our Zumo stream boxes to our Spectrum customers, I mean, it's made the viewing experience even better. They're able to connect all their favorite programming, integrating, you know, live TV, all of their streaming apps seamlessly in one platform, one environment. The voice activation features make it incredibly easy to find what it is that you're looking for. I think we've all sort of fumbled through that experience of, I know what I want to watch. How do I get to it? And Zumo really has nailed it in that regard. And then through the lens of marketers, I think somebody used the word simplification before. I mean, that really is at the center of everything that we're trying to do right now, is make it easy to buy across all of our platforms, whether it's linear or CTV, through one unified ad buy, and just make it easy for our advertisers to connect with their audiences. You know, the pool of inventory remains the same, whether it's accessed through that traditional set-top box setup or through streaming. The end result is the same, which is getting brands to their customers. And, you know, I think for us, that's really the path that we're going to continue to head down. Is I'm not going to say that we have it all figured out in terms of, you know, the what's next part of our tagline. I think it's going to be leaning more into technology and just continuing to focus on simplifying that buying experience.
That's great. Thanks, Michael. I want to dig in. We're going to dig into, you know, two things a little further into the conversation. One is, you know, how do we drive simplicity, right? Because there are, you know, things outside of our control, you know, regardless of where we come to this conversation from, that I think drives some obstacles and hurdles that we've got to get over as an industry. And then, you know, simplicity in the buying process is also, you know, big on my. You guys know me. I'm an operator at heart, right? I like to make things work smarter, better, faster. And so, you know, how do we continue to drive a level of simplicity for the buyer, and drive that evolution into the agency space in particular, because right now, you know, I think, Bill, to your point, there are, you know, their linear budgets and their digital budgets and their CTV budgets, and, you know, there seem to be buckets of budgets all over the place. And, you know, I think regardless of where we come to this conversation from, if we can make one bucket and drive different outcomes and through different product lines and opportunities through what is being, you know, the portfolios that are being represented in the space, that's going to pay off for, you know, the advertisers and the agencies to be able to buy in a more seamless way, and to drive results and you know, drive metrics seamlessly as we move forward. Walt, I don't want to miss your comments here either. TiVo and, you know, your strategy in approaching linear, you know, the linear versus CTV conversation.
Yeah, it is. It's really all sort of comes down to the data. And so it's good that we're having this conversation about the understanding that people jump back and forth now between linear and CTV. In fact, I think with a lot of the new platforms, being able to jump into, let's say, the Spectrum app, or then jump into a Zumo app, you know, on a single device, it's really converging now the experience of the consumer. And I think we've moved away, frankly, in the past few years, which is better for the consumer, from having these kind of bifurcated worlds of, okay, I'm going to be in the linear world, or I'm going to be in the CTV world. And frankly, I think a lot of agencies and buyers still kind of have that mindset that the consumer is not fluid across both of these environments. And really, the way that we approach this is through data. And I like to think of it with all of our CTV campaigns is we're putting a puzzle together, because what the agency is looking for is, how do I maximize the reach of my target audience and ensure that I'm not over frequencing the audience as they move back and forth between linear and CTV. So for every CTV campaign that we run, we use various audience segments that we've created from our TV viewership data. So that may be, and we do a lot of entertainment promotion. So, and which is also interesting in terms of jumping back and forth, because we do a lot of promotion on CTV to drive to a linear premiere of a show. And I think that's in it. And we have all the targeting and the measurement to prove that that's an effective way to reach an audience outside of the linear world and bring them back into a linear premiere, and then also as a follow-on into the CTV landscape. So I really think of this as we've got this very fragmented industry right now. We've got fragmented audiences, platforms, distribution mechanisms, and really the drive to simplicity and to ensure that the dollars are being used to maximize reach and effectiveness is really coming through data. That's the stitching that we're going to use to bring this world back to sort of when it was simpler, when you could buy broadcast and linear cable and realize that you were reaching all of your reach goals, which now requires bringing lots of different inventory together.
Talk a little bit about, I mean, well, you've your history, and I know we first met when you were at Visible World, and that was all about data. And I'm interested in your perspective on how the different disciplines that are relevant and are apparent in our ecosystem, whether it's linear or whether it's CTV or whether it's digital, but how does all that data come together, right? Because the metrics and what is being measured in each of those disciplines, while 80% of it looks and smells and tastes the same, there's still a variant between those mediums. And at what point do we get to a place where we're talking about media-centric data that is seamless across all of these mediums?
Yeah. I look at it as it very much, you have to apply data optimally against the media's ability to get to true addressability. And I think there's a role for each one of the media that we're talking about, whether it's linear television, addressable linear television, CTV, digital, and so forth. And each of those media do have various degrees of the application of the data. So I think foundationally, a campaign starts with, let me create an audience segment of who I want to reach. And that could be based on historic viewing patterns. It could be based on audiences who have been exposed to my campaign already, and so therefore I want to suppress them. But that audience then can be expanded, so it is then applicable to all media. And we work with a number of identity resolution companies to do that expansion work. But then you can apply it to linear television and do what has been happening in advanced linear for years, which is now data driven. So you can't, outside of addressable, you can't target in a specific audience, but you can work on effectiveness of indexes against that audience, and so make the most of your linear buy. Of course, on linear addressable, that audience can be applied. And then of course CTV is kind of the nirvana of everything that we've been working toward, back from my Visible World addressable days and doing a lot of original audience targeting on television. But now in CTV land, we can have the same level of precision targeting as on digital. So I think the challenge is you need to put this puzzle together, because linear television still plays a very important role within the media buy, because it has very broad reach. It is very simple to buy. It's easy to execute, although it doesn't have real-time campaign optimization. So
right.
What to think of is you sort of start with that as your base load capacity, and then add additional elements of media based on their level of precision targeting, and then ultimately measure all of them in concert with one another to then understand how they're incrementally improving the outcome. And so it's driving a more effective media buying strategy now. It's a better consumer experience because we're improving the personalization of advertising, but it's more work. It's definitely more work than sort of the old days of broadcast networks and top 20 cable networks.
No doubt. Hey, Bill, when you think about national versus local how, from a strategy standpoint, how are those conversations evolved over, in the last couple of years with the, emergence of, whether it be fast or whether it be, the other elements in the streaming game. How do you guys look at those conversations from a local versus national? Is there a very delineated line between the two? Are you approaching it the same or different? Give me a sense of that.
Yeah, no, I think once again, the benefit of, being part of two organizations that have such a significant footprint with Comcast and Charter. And I think the way we've approached fast and digital inventory, and I think Walt hit on it, the nirvana of being able to target. So for us, the ability, make it easy to buy and easy to sell. So because this is being delivered over IP, you have the ability, if that inventory in Walla Walla, Washington makes sense for someone's trying to find that left-handed bowler in Walla Walla, Washington, they can find that across Xumo, whether it's our app, whether it's in a Charter footprint, Comcast, whether it's enterprise, and we're pushing out across. So at the end of the day, for us, it's just additional inventory. And I do feel, Walt sort of touched on this earlier, but the idea of education and the way the sales teams at both Comcast and Charter are going to the market and to educate them on that holistic impression. So for us, we're kind of agnostic in a sense and giving the agencies and the clients the ability to buy that. And I do think the education level and the sophistication of our teams out there selling, and more importantly, our clients and agencies, is growing, and fast is becoming a very big part of the puzzle. And I think if you look at, everyone talks about cord cutting and cord shaving, people are still watching TV. They're just shifting. I think if you're home and you're flipping through your television, and the integration and discoverability of these apps or fast channels has been so seamless. So the consumer is not all of a sudden flipping through and going from, a news channel into a Xumo app and being like, well, hold on a second, I need to change my whole concept. I'm now watching free ad support streaming. Is IP. It's TV and it's streaming television. So the ability for folks to access that, and whether they want to buy it on a national level or a local level, that's there. And for us, I think the growth in knowledge in the local space is picking up tremendously, but that's not just by accident. I think it's educating the marketplace, where our marketing team and our sales teams on both sides have done a tremendous job pushing that narrative out there.
That's great. Michael, what's demand look, and I totally respect the fact that you're 60 days in. So at any point, if I'm getting too deep here, let me know. But what's demand look like from your 14 million subscribers, right? What experiences are you finding in the marketplace from the buy side that relates to linear versus CTV?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing that we continue to see is it's no longer a binary choice between linear or CTV, at least in the conversations that we're having with our brands and agency partners. I think the goal, and others have alluded to this, for most buyers these days is to maximize reach really through the combination of the two. So the conversations we're having, advertisers are asking us for omni-channel solutions, including a mix of both linear and CTV. Though really the challenge oftentimes is, how do you balance the two channels and make sure that you're not running up against any sort of duplicated reach?
Sure.
So, for us, it's also important to remember that while streaming really is stealing the majority of the headlines, oftentimes we do need to remind folks of the fact that, more than half of the viewing is still happening through traditional linear TV. So for us, it's presenting that unified option, which again, the marketplace is looking for, but also being really data informed around helping them understand how to balance those two things. One of the other unique advantages we have at Charter is first and foremost, we're a connectivity company. We are that broadband pipe into the home. And so we've got that direct relationship with our customers, and we understand at the household level what their viewing habits look like. And as a result, can really be very smart and data informed in terms of the recommendations that we're making to our agency partners, so that they do feel like they are striking the balance between the two. But for us, I would say those conversations, the demand itself really is about bringing us that combination of linear and streaming.
So probably relevant to both yourself and Bill here in the environment that he swims in every day. There's a transformation that's happening in in your companies, right? Do you see your teams looking at content and how that's delivered for how that's delivered and where there are advertising opportunities? Do you see them looking at CTV versus linear separately from a strategic standpoint, or have we crossed the chasm there, and are they strategizing against one and inclusive of both of those mediums? Either one of you have a comment?
Yeah, I was gonna say, is that Michael or Bill?
Yeah, probably either or.
Go ahead, Bill.
All right. Yeah, I think Michael really nailed it in terms of the idea of like connectivity, and I think that's the key on both sides, and bringing in folks to understand the education piece on going to market as sort of one impression or one video solution. That's the goal, but I do think there's a lot of education that still needs to happen. And the buyers, like the agencies and the buyers, are smart, and they're getting it, and they're realizing that people are still watching TV. They're just shifting, and it doesn't matter if they're watching it over a fast channel or if it's SVOD. There's opportunities to reach these users, and we're trying to go to market with that message. And I think it has gained traction, and it'll continue to gain traction. But all the things you talked about, there's ways that we need to go in terms of impression and measurement and performance. But those things are there, and I think it's picking up. So that push is that holistic video impression, that it's taking seed and market, but it's not 100% there yet, in my opinion. But we've come a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, eMarketer is predicting that this gets more balanced over the next 5 years, right? That there's a bit of a balance between CTV and linear. Those of us on the CTV side, obviously we love to see that. Not be to your point earlier, Michael, television watching television through MVPDs is not going to go away, right? We're looking to drive that experience and drive that. Or the industry is looking to drive that experience in a more balanced fashion, so it is more seamless. Do you guys have any predictions on, probably, Walt, I'd love to hear your perspective on this. Any predictions on, what that balancing looks like, what that shift looks like, how quickly have we seen the lion's share of it? Was COVID the driver on that and all that we saw, 3 years ago, or does it continue to balance over the next 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, I think it's going to follow a model of frankly different demographics. I mean, I think we know that across the board, this is a very generalized statement, but we know that the linear TV viewing audience is older, and it will likely continue to be older. And that CTV streaming is a younger audience. And so I think it's all going to depend on the campaign strategy for the advertiser and creating that audience target, and then finding where that audience is in CTV versus linear, and that'll likely determine sort of what the shift is. I mean, we know that there are a number of direct-to-consumer brands that are highly specialized that are on CTV only, and at this point. So I think it's really going to just follow the advertisers' sort of core objectives. I do think something that is going to occur within the CTV world to ultimately ensure that more and more of the spend does go to CTV over traditional television budgets is the amount of information that publishers are providing agencies and marketers is going to have to increase, because I do think we're going to get to a world where you can buy a CTV campaign and you can package it up and specifically, I want these day parts and I want these programs, and it starts to look a lot more like the way traditional television has historically been bought, with the ability of adding a lot of data for effectiveness. But I do, Bill, you did say we are sort of like reinventing the old again, and it is. I think we have to acknowledge that the linear TV advertising ecosystem was extraordinarily successful for 50 years.
Right.
There's a lot to be learned from why it was so successful. And I think one of the important things as we move more and more to the CTV world is, don't throw throw it all out the window and say, that's sort of yesterday's news. But there's a lot to be learned in terms of how inventory can be packaged smartly so that publishers actually maximize yield, and then the advertiser is reaching the audience they want to reach.
That's great. Any of y'all have perspective on when we see budgets not delineated between linear and connected television? And I use those two, but there, like I mentioned earlier, there's another half a dozen delineated budgets that are out there. Anyone have perspective on that, or thoughts on when we see that media budget again come together seamlessly, and the decisions like Walt's talking about being made from one source in an agency or at an advertiser versus individually from from different departments, if you will, or organizations?
That's a tough one. I think if we knew that, we would be very rich people potentially. I don't know. Yeah. It's a challenging piece, because some agencies are thinking that way right now in terms of holistic video, but to Walt and Michael's earlier points, there's still that true cross-screen measurement around reach and frequency. And I know we're in a really good place, but I don't think we're at that, granted, Nielsen and ComScreen and everything else aren't perfect, but I don't think we're at that stage yet. And also, I think being salespeople, maybe we want to sandbag a little bit and not say when all the budgets are going to shift over, because our goals might go up. So Michael, just keep it low.
That's a very good point, Bill. Yeah, I mean, just to quickly comment on that, I totally agree. I think there's some wishful thinking that in the next few years, things will start to come together and those budgets will be unlocked more holistically. But there's another piece of this, just to be totally candid, that's also probably going to continue to disrupt things in a little in the future is the prominence of programmatic within this environment, right? So the fact that linear and streaming dollars ultimately might come together in a more cohesive way and be used to make a collective linear and CTV buy, what we're starting to recognize is that many of the streaming dollars, not surprisingly, are moving more towards programmatic, right? Obvious reasons. I think we're aware of data, ease of transaction, et cetera. And so I think that's the other piece of it, because in some cases, as many folks are probably aware, the agency might have a trading desk where they're the ones that are tasked with planning, budgeting and executing programmatic buys, but also brands are bringing that sort of discipline in-house as well. And so that also makes for, you know, a situation where it might not be that easy to seamlessly buy or bring a budget together to make that unified buy. But I do think we'll get there. I think it's heading in that direction. But worth paying attention to how programmatic continues to impact that equation.
Look, just a public service announcement. If anyone online has questions, feel free and throw those into the live Q&A. I know that Kim is working through that, and we'll feed that to us as we get through the next couple of the last 10 or so minutes. Any other thing? I mean, Walt, you talked about you know, data. Michael, you talk about, you know, driving the level of seamlessness between your offering, you know, internally there between you know, the digital and linear. You know, obviously, Bill, you've kind of walked through your all that Xumo was involved with kind of under the Comcast umbrella and driving you know, that seamlessness and to eliminate the fragmentation. What are the other things that you know, that you guys or that we're doing to help marketers navigate the transition in the marketplace? Because I think, you know, oftentimes, you know, from a buying perspective, you know, there is confusion on where do I go to get exactly what I need to meet whether it's the, you know, the attribution that I'm looking for or the KPIs that I'm looking for. There's this grocery store effectively of solutions that are out there. How do we help the marketers navigate the fragmentation? Anyone have a comment on that?
I think it starts with education, and Todd, a couple times throughout this conversation, you brought it up. We have to demystify the space. I think oftentimes we talk in jargon and FAST and SVOD and AVOD and, you know, SSAI, and it does make us sound smart on panels, but I do think it creates maybe a pullback from some certain clients and agencies because of the fact that we're trying to make it sound smarter, but then it's harder to buy. So that aspect of just, you know, moving to a holistic and start calling it streaming TV versus CTV and OTT, I think that specific step, make it more approachable, easier to buy, easier to sell. And, you know, I don't think we have enough time to go through. The measurement is getting there, where it's going to take some time because you have, you know, multiple platforms, certain walled gardens. You know, the fact that Michael and I both are part of two very large companies that are, you know, utilities that are providing connectivity and service, but extremely respectful of our customers in terms of data. So doing that in a privacy compliant way now, but more importantly, I'd say future-proofing that, because there's been, you know, the California protection, the CCPA Act in terms of data, and the GDPR Act in terms of European data and rights. So just being open-minded and honest and transparent without being too jargony is a really important step. We're talking about streaming television or the new television.
Yeah, that's, I mean, one of the questions that just came, you know, that just came over the Q&A was, you know, how does data privacy and the data privacy laws affect CTV targeting? Anyone, you have a perspective on that, Walt?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone who is in the business is compliant. I mean, or should be, if you're not, is compliant with CCPA and individual other state regulations, where there is full consent that is provided for the collection of data and the application of that data for a CTV campaign. I think that's absolute table stakes, and the industry is doing well with complying with it. One of the comments I wanted to make, going back to your how do we improve the industry to make it simpler? I think one of the elements is having a standard set of metrics that everyone in the industry can agree with, because I hear this all the time from agencies will say, well, when you talk about your footprint, is that devices or is it households? Because somebody, this provider is using this metric, and what is your universe of this audience, and is it based on over a 30-day period? Is it over, what time period? I think that's to harken back to my comment about what can we learn from linear television. The fact that, we'd love to bash Nielsen, but Nielsen was very good at everyone agreeing to, this is the universe estimate for this particular demographic. And every cable network broadcaster said, I can actually give you my inventory and my audience against those metrics. And everybody kind of agreed on what the rules were. I think that is something that the CTV industry should come together around and say, make it simple. These are the metrics that everybody is going to adhere to, so that when a buyer says, look, I need to sort of compare you X versus Y, we've got apples and apples.
Yeah, exactly. Another question that's popped up on the screen. This is probably for, Michael, for you and Bill predominantly. It's the ability to reach consumers across screen, right? And connecting your linear, viewers to, the streaming viewers that are viewing on your platforms. What are you guys? What are the priorities there? How are you all addressing that from your capability, from a capability perspective? Can you speak to that?
You want me to go first, Michael, or do you want to jump in?
Jump in.
Okay. Yeah, going back, connectivity, having the ability to we're serving these ads. We know the households in a privacy compliant way. So we do have really unique insight to reach those and to talk about your reach and frequency across screens. And I think the important thing is kind of tying in the linear aspect with the digital aspect. So those things are happening now. And I think we're continually trying to evolve and get better. So just by using our own data, and once again, I'll say in a very privacy compliant way, and also potentially working with other partners out there, whether it's companies like Blockgraph, or the beauty of sitting within Comcast and Charter, Freewheel's a sister company. So having that mechanism both on the linear delivery side as well as the digital delivery side opens up those opportunities to manage the universal reach and frequency while still staying compliant and ahead of what's coming next. Because obviously the government changes a lot of these rules, and privacy first, we want to make sure that we are reaching that consumer, but we're having their consent when we do that and checking all boxes.
Yeah, that's great. Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was well said. My answer will be similar, which again, I alluded to this before, the fact that we've got that holistic view into our households. These are folks that are logged into their devices. In many cases, they are logged into the Spectrum TV app, and that's the way in which they're viewing live TV across our platform. And so that's an area that we specialize. We're able to be very targeted in terms of understanding from a device perspective, cross-screen perspective on the front end. I think everybody has spoken to the importance of first-party data. I mean, we can't stress this enough when we're out in the marketplace, especially as there's so many conversations happening around cookie deprecation. We live within a cookieless environment in CTV, and that's such a competitive advantage you have, not only just in terms of working with a company like Spectrum Reach, but frankly, certainly Xumo, TiVo, and many others. that are able to provide that level of sort of one-to-one marketing opportunity, because we've got folks that are authenticated. And in many cases, again, in a privacy compliant way, we know who they are. And then on the back end of that, from a cross-screen measurement and attribution perspective, I mean, we could spend the next 2 hours talking about all of the work that we're able to do there and the way in which we're able to provide that level of transparency and visibility into campaigns and what that looks like from a cross-screen perspective.
That's great. Gentlemen, I want to be really respectful of time, and for all of our folks in the audience, we've run up against our end time. I think to wrap it up, what I'm hearing from the convergence of linear to connected television, there's a commitment to data and data visualization, and driving the accessibility and the transparency of that data is a major driver, and will continue to be so as we drive a further level of seamlessness into the ecosystem. Experience, both from a customer perspective and from a media buying perspective. Again, driving transparency and a level of seamlessness there is going to continue to help that drive the balance between the two. And then simplicity, I think overarching is where as an industry we've got to wrap our arms around and be committed to making this more simple. And so given all three of those, are there any other major themes that you would say, hey, Porch, you're missing this, or you inadvertently left this out of where the industry has to go in the next 12 to 18 months to continue to deliver the results that we all do?
I don't think it's 12 to 18 months, but this idea of convergence, and I keep hearing, this is quite a dress rehearsal or training for when we move everything to IP delivered. So I think that's one really interesting piece, but I honestly don't have a crystal ball to understand when that happens, because you have bandwidth, you have technology in people's homes, but I do think that's something we should all strive for. And all this stuff that we're doing, the measurement, the targeting, the way to package and buy and deliver and reach and measure, said measure twice, is really important, because that's coming. I don't know if it's 3 years, I don't know if it's 7 years, but it's coming soon.
Yep, that's a good point. Thanks, Bill. Well, guys, gentlemen, thank you so much for spending the last hour with me and with this Strategus webinar. We appreciate your willingness to carve out the time and to impart some wisdom and perspective with all of the experience that you've got in this industry. So thanks a million, and I'll look forward to catching up with you each individually afterwards, and hopefully we'll come up with another topic that we can tap into your wisdom and experience with. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Have a good one.